Welcome into the PFF podcast. It is your week 2 review. If you guys are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button. We have plenty of content coming your way on the PFF podcast every single week. I'm Steve Palazzolo, joined by Sam Monson. And before we dive into it, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at DraftKings. Football season has begun, but it's still not too late to get closer to the game you love with DraftKings 1 Week Fantasy Football. This Sunday, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 Pick'em contest that is totally free to enter. Pick'em is the newest way to play 1 Week Fantasy Football, and drafting your team is faster than ever. DraftKings has organized players into 8 tiers. All you have to do is select one player from each tier, choose between public contests with big cash prizes, or just go with private contests where you can compete against a group of friends. DraftKings also has a beginner and casual contest where you'll play against people of similar skill set. The best part is you can draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF in DraftKings free contest to win $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. That's promo code PFF to compete for your share of $100,000 in total prizes. The contest is totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply, and see DraftKings.com for details. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. I like our podcast nook. It's coming together well, but we have a real seating problem in here. Our creaky chairs, our avalanche chair that's trying to tip you off the front of it. We need to invest in some serious high-quality lazy boy action, I think, really.
You're in the creaky chair?
Yes.
Right now?
I'm in the creak.
The avalanche chair is the one that somehow it's like a 45-degree angle forward.
So it does feel like tipping you off the front of the chair.
It feels like you're falling. Our producer Taylor here is sitting in this very uncomfortable-looking chair as well.
Yeah, that doesn't look a good one.
We're sitting in these supposed to be comfortable leather chairs.
Yeah.
But yours is creaky. Or it's an avalanche. Creaky. Mine's pretty good. I'm feeling good over
Yeah?
here.
You hit the butter zone?
I'm in the right seat here.
Okay.
I'm in the right seat. We're feeling pretty good about the office and the nook. We had a lot of fun last week. 4 PFF podcasts, including our 4th one, our preview episode over at Queen City Radio live in front of hundreds of thousands of people at the bar. We had a lot of fun with that one. Hopefully do that again soon. All right, let's discuss week 2, Sam. I know you watched that Denver Broncos Dallas Cowboys game. By the way, I was one of the few PFF analysts to pick Denver to win. I have to throw that out there. Yeah. Even though I've been calling for regression for Denver this whole year. Talk to me about what happened here, because this was an absolute beatdown. Both sides of the ball. Denver beating up on Dallas, who was supposed to be one of the best teams in the league.
So I'll give you that you called a Denver win, and all very well and good, impressive, congratulations. Woo. The thing, though, is that nobody saw the way this happened coming. That Dallas Cowboys team could not run against the Denver Broncos defensive front, and that was the one thing.
Big upset there. Yeah,
that was where the mismatch was. You know, me and Mike were talking on the preview podcast about how the reason the Dallas Cowboys were going to win is because how on earth was this Denver defensive front going to stop the best offensive line in the league run blocking the ball down their throats with Zeke Elliott in the backfield? I mean, that looked like the single biggest mismatch on paper heading into this game.
Well, actually, they might not be the best offensive line in the league.
And they absolutely got destroyed by that Broncos defensive front. And it wasn't just the edge guys, because you kind of expect Von Miller is going to have himself a day against more or less any right tackle in the league. And that was absolutely the case here. Shaq Barrett on the other side, having joy against Tyron Smith, is one of the stories, I think, of this game. I mean, he has elevated himself from being interesting preseason story, guy who's undrafted, gets himself into the rotation, gets himself into the team. Suddenly he's a starter and he's beating up one of the best left tackles in the NFL. I mean, that's not supposed to happen. But the interior struggled as well. The only guy that graded well for Dallas was Zach Martin. Travis Frederick had the worst game I can remember him having, and it came against a sequence of guys who he should have been destroying. The left guard wasn't having any more joy either. There was no way that Dallas team should have struggled as badly as it did running the ball, to the point where they just gave up running. Now, some of that was game situation. They got down heavy against Denver and abandoned it to pass. But I think a lot of it is they gave up running because they couldn't run the ball. Zeke Elliott got absolutely nothing.
It really was a surprise. How big is this Shaq Barrett emergence? Because we're talking about a Denver defense. They've been one of the best in the league the last couple of years. They made it to the Super Bowl. They were an elite team based off of Von Miller on the edge, and DeMarcus Ware on the edge. Now DeMarcus Ware is retired. They draft Shane Ray in the first round, and it seems like they get it. Just keep those pass rushers flowing. Shane Ray's been okay during his time. He's had some pretty good success, but he's injured right now, and it should be a place where they're trying to piece things together until he gets back. And then you have Shaquille Barrett, 2 quarterback hits and 7 hurries, also 5 total defensive stops to lead the team. That was pretty much a dominant effort for Barrett. So he's just picked up right where DeMarcus Ware and what they left off and where they wanted Shane Ray to be.
Honestly, based on that game, he's an upgrade over DeMarcus Ware. The DeMarcus Ware that left, the tail end of his career in Denver.
Retired.
So, Von Miller took over that game and just absolutely destroyed La'el Collins. We were talking preseason that La'el Collins looked like a pretty good right tackle, or a better right tackle than he ever was a guard in the NFL. Week 1, he was fine. Week 2, he went against arguably the best edge rusher in the NFL and just couldn't block the guy. Only 2 sacks, and the way those sacks came isn't entirely on Collins. So, there are some Dallas fans out there that go, he was fine against Von Miller. No, forget that. Look at the tape. Watch him try and block this guy throughout the course of this game, and it was a disaster. It was a nightmare. Von Miller jumped offside 4 times in that game. Kept trying to time up their snap count, and kept missing it 4 times. At one point, he was able to jump all the way offside. The ball was snapped. He jumped all the way back onside and then beat La'el Collins around the outside for a pressure. He just destroyed La'el Collins. But at least on paper, that kind of makes sense. Von Miller, the best edge rusher in the NFL, going up against a guy who's played right tackle for 2 games. It makes sense. Shaq Barrett is not supposed to take advantage of Tyron Smith on the other side of the field. That, if anything, is supposed to be a mismatch in Tyron Smith's favor, and you would expect Barrett to come out of that game having been effectively shut down or kept relatively quiet compared with his baseline. Instead, while Von Miller led the NFL in terms of total pressures for edge rushers with 13 of them this week and a batted pass, Shaq Barrett was second with 9. So he was the second guy in the NFL in terms of edge rusher pressures, coming largely against Tyron Smith. Now, he beat up Chaz Green at left guard on a bunch of stunts as well, so it wasn't all Tyron Smith. But he got way more joy out of one of the best left tackles in the NFL than you would imagine. And not just as a pass rusher. He torpedoed a couple of run plays there by, again, beating Tyron Smith.
One of 9 carries for Ezekiel Elliott, 2 for Rod Smith, 11 designed runs for the Dallas Cowboys, throwing 3 scrambles from Dak Prescott. I said that well, actually, earlier, just to highlight the piece that we do every week for Sports Illustrated. That's how we kicked off the season, Sam. We said, well, actually, everybody thinks this Dallas offensive line is the best in the league. Well, actually, maybe they're not. That was what we were highlighting. And this is a game that highlighted maybe they're not as elite as people think.
Well, here's your statistic. 9 carries for 8 yards is the box score number for Zeke Elliott in this game, but 13 of them came after contact. So the man gained 8 yards and had to gain 13 yards.
It's like almost negative yard before a carry.
His average in this game was getting hit significantly deep into the backfield, running behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL.
I did pour through the tape before coming on here, all 9 carries, to see what was going wrong. A lot of penetration from that Denver. When you usually watch that Dallas offensive line, it is just like a clinic as far as the run game goes, especially on the interior, especially Tyron Smith on the backside. They were giving up penetration left and right. Sometimes the tight ends would fail, but there was always 1 or 2 breakdowns on every single play, or just a good play by someone on Denver to blow up the play, and that's what threw things off. The funny thing about this is I was expecting a more Dak-heavy offense this year when Zeke was suspended, right? But he's on the field. He only gets these handful of carries. It was a Dak-centric game, and I thought it was maybe part of his natural progression to start carrying the offense a little bit more, right? Not that they were going to get away from the run game, but to focus on the short passing game. Last year he was such a good decision maker. He finds the open man. The scheme does a really good job of getting guys like Cole Beasley, Jason Witten open in the middle, Des Bryant outside. This was not a clean game for Dak for the second week in a row. What do you make of his performance so far? A lot of dangerous throws in here. He had some unlucky interceptions, but some lucky non-interceptions. It all evened off to another subpar grade for Dak for the second week in a row.
Yeah, this was a weird game for Dak Prescott because it's one of those games where the numbers probably do a pretty good effort of telling exactly what happened. They just don't do it in the right way. So he threw the ball to Aqib Talib twice, and Des Bryant turned defensive back to break up an interception. Des Bryant had basically 3 pass defenses in that game, which is kind of weird. He may have led the Broncos in terms of pass breakups.
He's a wide receiver.
Yes, for the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
So that was strange. But he had to break up 2 passes that were basically thrown straight to Aqib Talib, and they were bad decisions. I mean, one of them was a go route over the top, basically a sort of fade in the middle of the field, and it was never open. Aqib Talib was over the top of it, thrown straight to him. And it's just a strange couple of decisions for Dak Prescott to fire the balls out there. On the other hand, one of the first interception he had was hit Des Bryant in the hands. Should have been a completed pass. The second interception was tipped at the line by Von Miller and ended up in Aqib Talib's hands. So if you wanted to look at it that way, you can say that the 2 that he did throw were not his fault, and then there were another 2 that he should have thrown that he got fixed. So
this is one of those rare cases it evens off, though, because we spend a lot of time, like I did the Seattle game. Russell Wilson threw 4, maybe 5 that should have been intercepted. Not one showed up on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
And even though his stats weren't great, I had to be like, look, guys, Russell Wilson easily could have had 4. This one at least evened off.
And that's what I'm saying. So it kind of nets to the right place. It just did it in a weird way. So when you look at the passer rating here, it kind of tells the story. He had a pass rating of 68.6, and there were some nice plays in there. He did make some perfect passes, some good placement. The touchdown to Des Bryant on a back shoulder end zone play again against Aqib Talib. Basically, it's a perfect pass. It wasn't the most difficult pass in the world, but it was excellent ball placement against man coverage. Needed to put it in the back shoulder. Put it in a place where only Des Bryant can make the play. Aqib Talib couldn't do anything about that. That's a great pass. But he put the ball in harm's way a lot in this game, and he didn't have the run game to mask those bad plays. This was a game where it was all on his shoulders because the run game, for whatever reason, just could not get anything going against this Broncos team. They had to chase the game quite early. So it was all on Dak, and he just wasn't up to the task this week.
Sometimes playing in Denver just takes you out of your element, does weird things. It's a clear home field advantage for Denver in the thin air and all that stuff. They always play well there. So my preseason prediction of a little regression from Denver, I'm not completely against it. But, man, the defense, we were talking about it before. We both thought the defense would take a step back. Great start to the season for the defense. Rushing the passer, still can cover on the back end. And then offensively, the opposite of Dallas, they run 39 times for 178 yards. It's even better if you take out Simeon's 4 scrambles. So they've got a versatile run game. And Trevor Siemian looks a lot cleaner than he did last year. He's just much more comfortable. He threw 4 touchdowns, but I think his performance is more than the stats. They're playing to his strengths. And, he's a good thrower of the football. It's all about getting him clean reads and, getting to the right guy. And so far, so good for Denver's offense.
I think there's 3 things at work here for this Denver team looking better than we were giving them credit for rolling into the season. The first is that their depth on defense looks better than certainly I thought it was. I thought that this team had gotten pretty thin, certainly up front, than they were at their best when they were able to go really deep on that defensive line. But these guys have actually started to play quite well. Shelby Harris is another Shaq Barrett type of preseason wonder who's been playing pretty well, made the teams and had played in both games, had 33 snaps against the Cowboys, played pretty well. Derek Wolfe has been playing well. Adam Gotsis has been okay, done enough to be a valuable part of that team.
7 run stops in 2 games, so he's making plays.
Yeah, and you've got that combination of Barrett and Von Miller, which is playing as well as ever, which is, really helping them. But, Will Parks as well at the back end. They've got guys that are playing well. So I think the depth is better than I was giving it credit for. 2, Trevor Siemian has been improved. He's not good, but he's way better than suck, which was the big problem. If you can get anything beyond that,
that's a quote right there,
out out of Trevor Siemian. He's the guy that he only needs to be. He's in one of those perfect situations where he only needs to be okay. If he's okay, this team is in a good shape.
That's what they needed last year. I kept saying
yeah.
Denver had a championship level deep. Denver was the team that could have slowed the Patriots in the playoffs last year.
If Trevor Siemian was up to that task.
If Trevor Siemian could at least, if he had played average last year, got them into the playoffs, and then they would have had a chance.
So he wasn't able to do it last year. He might be able to do it this year if the defense is at the same level and all that kind of stuff. 3, C.J. Anderson looks healthy and at his best. And C.J. Anderson at his best is a really, really good running back.
I mean, his whole career, his peaks.
And we haven't really seen that
5 type of peaks
since 2014.
Yep.
He burst onto the scene. He was incredible that year. I think he was one of our top-graded running backs that year based on like 500 snaps. Really, really good. And then injury struck, and we really haven't seen that guy since. We've seen flashes of it, and you get every now and again, you get a run. But basically, it's been a nicked-up, battered C.J. Anderson from that point on. This looks like that guy again. And there were runs in there where he's just bowling ball like, skittling off guys, spinning, rattling through contact. Just incredible performance on the ground. And if they get that guy with Trevor Siemian playing better, with the defense in shape, they are back to being contenders. The only thing that could torpedo that is that with Garrett Bowles going down, carted off the field in tears, they fear a broken ankle. You're in bad shape when like the best case scenario is a high ankle sprain, which is what they're hoping for.
Right.
Because at the moment they're back to having Donald Stevenson as their left tackle and Menelik Watson as their right tackle. And we'll get to Watson later on.
We have a Menelik Watson stat. Sam has a stat for you. We're going to drop some PFF elite stats a little bit later.
But basically they're back to having the worst tackle combination in the National Football League again, and that could kill the entire offense.
Let's talk a little AFC West then, because coming into the season, I think we pegged 2 divisions as maybe the best in all of football, the AFC West and then the NFC South. NFC South, we'll put that aside for now.
Yeah.
AFC West now has 3 teams sitting at 2-0. We mentioned Denver. The Oakland Raiders are also 2-0. The Kansas City Chiefs are now 2-0. And then the poor Los Angeles Chargers, 0-2.
The Mike Renner's Chargers Super Bowl bandwagon, which he definitely founded, is crumbling beneath him. They're 0-2 chasing a whole bunch of teams that look really good.
If I know Mike, he's not ready to jump off.
Yeah, you think he's still going to go?
He'll be 3-11, and he'll still keep the faith. Unfortunately, but that's what happens in good divisions. I know they haven't. It's not like they've been playing each other, but in good divisions, some team's going to be a pretty good team and fall off. I still think the Chargers are better than an 0-2 team. Maybe the subject of our Well Actually segment this week.
I mean, I thought that team would be Denver this year, but it turns out it might actually be the Chargers.
I thought Denver might be the worst team in the AFC West, but not looking good so far. What do you make of these teams? The Oakland Raiders, I mean, the Oakland Raiders are taking care of business the way a good team should.
Yeah.
They have a very good win at Tennessee. We talked about that last week. That's going to come back and be a very big win down the road, I think, in the AFC playoff picture.
Well, I mean, we just saw that Tennessee is legit. I mean, they're not, they're not the team. They're not a bad team because Oakland was able to overcome them that first week, even if we thought they might beat the Raiders. I mean, they just came back and stomped Jacksonville. So that Titans team is good.
That's why I think it's either going to be, it's a precursor to what we're going to see in the playoffs, or they're going to be jockeying for position. So it's a good win against Tennessee. They took care of business the way good teams should against a bad New York Jets team. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, we already know that they go into New England and do the near impossible, taking it to the Patriots and dominating the second half. And then they win a nice hard-fought game against the Philadelphia Eagles at home. The Eagles, again, a good, solid, all-around team. Love you, Eagles fans. And, the Chiefs come out, finding a way to come out on top. What do you make of those teams and how they're shaping up? Because the Chiefs are also the team that we said, they have a good defense. Can the offense figure it out? Now it's like, hey, you have an explosive offense now in Kansas City.
Now that I think about it, this is hitting Mike from both ends, because Mike doubled down on the Chiefs thing after week 1 and said that the Chiefs, his hot take after that week was that the Chiefs were not going to make the playoffs. Now they're 2-0 and they've beaten the Patriots and the Eagles. That's looking,
not good for Mike. We'll ask him on the preview pod later in the week.
But I think their big thing, one, is Kareem Hunt looks legit. Again, there'll be a Kareem Hunt statistic later on there, but Kareem Hunt has been dominating.
You're crushing it with the professional teases so far.
I'm liking it, isn't it?
Hinting at what the stats that we're going to drop later in the
Keep
pod.
listening, folks, because there's good things upcoming. But Kareem Hunt didn't have as many touches, 13 carries this week, 81 yards, 63 of which he basically made himself after the contact, 2 touchdowns, broke 3 tackles on those 13 carries. Again, he's been a factor in the pass game, which is huge for these Chiefs running backs because Alex Smith is your quarterback and you're going to get plenty of opportunities for dump-off passes. So another 3 catches this week. But Hunt is a guy that can make his own yards. Hunt is a guy that can carry this offense. And they've done a good job of scheming people open to make Alex Smith look more aggressive.
Absolutely. It's a great way to put it because I've been so back and forth on Alex Smith because at times during his career we've seen him play top-end football and make plays down the field and all that stuff, and you keep reminding me that he's just not capable of playing this aggressive style. But if they can get a little bit more aggressive play out of him on deep passing now this season, 5 of 7 for 257 yards. He's leading the NFL with 257 yards on deep passes, 153.3 passer rating. I'm not saying he needs to keep it up to that level. That's only 7 attempts in 2 games, but hit on a couple of those every game. And then he hit the touchdown pass. I'm using air quotes here. The pass to Travis Kelce was a little shovel pass where Travis Kelce runs through the entire Eagles defense. But that is what they're bringing to the table now. You've got Kareem Hunt on the ground and out of the backfield. You have Travis Kelce, a mismatch weapon. Tyreek Hill, another mismatch weapon. If Alex Smith can just sprinkle in a couple of those deep balls per game, such a dangerous offense to defend.
And there's a few things about that. One, he has a good deep ball. I mean, that's the kind of ironic thing about Alex Smith and his unwillingness to uncork it, is that he does have a good arm. He's got a pretty accurate deep ball. If he took as many chances as a bunch of other quarterbacks out there, he would have good deep passing statistics. And suddenly he would go from being a quarterback that you can probably win with if everything else falls in the right way to being a guy who could carry a team to a Super Bowl. But he's never going to be that guy, and it's just inherent in him. So the couple of things in there is, one, he's not attempting that many deep passes. It's just that he's hitting on almost all the ones he's attempting so far.
Right.
So leads the league
part of it's scheme, though. I mean, we talked.
That's what I'm saying.
So they had busted coverage against New England to Tyreek Hill. I mean, part of it is scheme.
So he's attempted 7 deep passes, which is less than half the number Carson Wentz has attempted to lead the league. So 8 quarterbacks, have attempted more deep passes this season than Alex Smith. He's attempting more than he has in the past, but it's not like he's turned into this air-it-out deep ball quarterback. We were talking before about it's just a difference in mentality between Alex Smith and a guy like Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer looks up, and the first read is the deep shot, and he is asking himself, is there anything I'm seeing right now that prevents me putting this ball in the air? And if not,
and even if
it's
it
gone.
does, I'm still throwing it anyway.
Yeah, but at the very minimum, if not, the ball is in the air and it's gone. Alex Smith looks up and he's saying, is this open enough for me to put this ball in the air? It's just a different way of looking at exactly the same read, targeting essentially the same player. Carson Palmer is looking for a reason he can't throw the ball, and Alex Smith is looking for a reason he can throw the ball. And it's why you see him double clutch on these, play action passes. He goes to the first read, he wants to throw it and just can't do it, checks down to the underneath guy. So you're still seeing that guy this year, and we're not even seeing him take more of those shots. It's just that the Chiefs have been really good at scheming guys wide open. So the first game, it's the busted coverage to Tyreek Hill, it's the busted coverage to Kareem Hunt. He's seeing guys that are 10 yards open, and even Alex Smith will throw those balls into the air.
He did drop a beauty over the shoulder on Sunday with a guy, step of separation. So, again, he'll drop those in every now and again. As far as Oakland, like I said, the thing that I like about Oakland, tough road win and then a dominant outing against the Jets. Just what good teams should be doing. We have an offensive line nugget for the Raiders that we'll be dropping later as part of our...
I'm feeling good about my Raiders Super Bowl pick.
They look good, man. They look good in the right places. I mentioned last week defensive playmakers stepping up. Another huge game from Carl Joseph, currently one of the top-graded safeties in the NFL. They used him as a pass rusher a little bit, six rushes. He had a sack and 3 hurries. Making plays around the line of scrimmage. He had the pass breakup in the end zone in week 1. The defense feels a little bit like it's the Khalil Mack show, and then just give me a couple other playmakers to emerge. And Carl Joseph, he's that guy. I feel like he's a huge key to that defense, really the entire secondary. But so far, so good there. AFC West, man, I can't wait till these teams start playing each other. And again, the Chargers, they are, blocked field goal, missed field goal, dropped pick 6 away from being 2-0. So it's a fine line for them. They're just chargering right now. That's what they do.
They're not a bad team. They're just in a hole. And in that division,
right,
it's going to be tough because, like I said, they haven't faced any of those teams yet. So they're going to, at the very minimum, they're likely to run into one of these teams already in a hole needing wins. And you're going to be expecting that against, 3 of the better teams in the AFC.
So the AFC West, we'll see how it shakes out. It's going to be great. And, one of the things we talked about as far as Denver and their win against Dallas was their ability to just control the line of scrimmage, really to control Dallas's elite offensive line. Let's talk offensive lines around the NFL right now. Last week we talked a lot about defense, and I said, look, there's all these teams scoring under 10 points. It happened again this weekend. All these teams scoring under 10 points. We saw a 9-3 Panthers-Bills game. We saw a 12-9 Seahawks 49ers game, a 13-9 Texans-Bengals game. This is ridiculous, Sam. I think a lot of it's because of bad offensive line play. What's going on in the NFL? Let's dive into offensive lines, both good and bad.
I mean, that Thursday night football game, the Houston Texans at the Cincinnati Bengals, we talked about it on the preview podcast, and we basically nailed that game in terms of how it was going to play out, other than the fact that the Texans were the team that snuck the win as opposed to Cincinnati. But anytime the game is bad on Thursday night, people are talking about the short week, it's Thursday night football, it's ruining the standard of football. It had nothing to do with Thursday night whatsoever. It had to do with you watching 2 of the worst offensive lines in the NFL going head-to-head in just this cacophony of abysmal offensive line play.
What?
And it was just miserable. I mean, Jake Fisher gave up an absolute ton of pressure, 5 hurries and a hit going up against J.J. Watt. And I actually think he may have been the best performing offensive lineman they had, purely because he was going up against J.J. Watt.
Yeah, all things.
And that was the most he gave up. But everybody on that offensive line was giving up a huge amount of pressure. They had nowhere to go. The Texans legitimately, between their awful offensive line in week 1 and losing every tight end on the roster between then and week 2, basically just ran with Mike's plan of, well, if your offensive line sucks, just play more of them.
7 offensive linemen.
7-man line. And they did that throughout the game. They were playing 6, 7-man offensive lines, having legitimate offensive linemen basically play tight end, eligible receiver tight ends, just to give them some formation integrity with what they're used to doing. And they still gave up a ton of pressure.
And then they just started running into like 10-man boxes on 3rd and short and getting nowhere.
That's the problem with that strategy.
Look, I'm usually the one on Twitter. So, Twitter's usually the place where this game's terrible just because it's low scoring. And I'm usually the guy that comes in and was like, I enjoy good defense. It's okay. This game is okay. I had no defense for that game.
There is a difference between good defense and inept offense. And at the moment, most of these low-scoring, terrible games are because of inept offense, and in particular, inept offensive line play. And you're seeing that, I mean, we said before, it doesn't matter whether Deshaun Watson or Tom Savage is out there quarterback, because at the moment, that offensive line is not going to let any quarterback play well. So really, if Deshaun Watson hadn't done anything to earn the job before then, he still hasn't. And if anything, he's been worse. I mean, Deshaun Watson's he had that spectacular run in that game.
It was great.
You take that out of his game, and admittedly, this is not the greatest argument in the world, because that is literally the difference between winning and losing in that game. But if you take that out of the game, he was bad. I mean, he made a lot of poor decisions, didn't do an awful lot with the football. There were some plays in there where he took off from perfectly clean pockets because his first read wasn't there. So it was one read. I've had to go to 2. I'm out of here. I mean, that's a terrible sign for what should be a pocket passing quarterback.
Even when he made his first read, there were multiple times like you just don't throw certain routes into certain coverages.
Yeah.
And he was doing that. I mean, he was throwing short curls into cover 2 where there should be a cornerback, all these different things. So yeah, he's been off a little bit. Using PFF Elite pass blocking efficiency stats, the worst offensive lines as far as giving up pressure on a per-play basis. Houston, number 32. Arizona's number 31. Cincinnati Bengals, number 30. So that's why we saw 30 versus 32 on Thursday night. Indianapolis Colts are 29. Seattle Seahawks 28. And actually the Denver Broncos at 27. So we're seeing in the numbers that they have, again, we'll pull out one of them later on, the numbers that these guys are giving up as far as pressures are just ridiculous. We keep coming back to, like, how do you build the offensive line? How do you at least get these guys to play middle of the pack football? It's almost like half the NFL would just yearn for middle of the pack offensive line play. And just recently, my big take on offensive line play was that you could hide it in the NFL more than ever, as long as you have the right playmakers and guys that can get open quickly. I'm starting to back off that a little bit. I think there are situations where that's the case. If you just have a guy that can get open quickly and you get rid of the ball. But at some point,
I think it's true to
you got to
degrees.
protect the passer.
Yeah, I think it's true to an extent. But there is a threshold. There is a point at which you just can't overcome that level of ineptitude. And the Seahawks are at that point right now. It's why they were only able to put 12 points up against the 49ers. I mean, and we were talking earlier about Russell Wilson making all these bad plays. And I'm saying it almost feels like you have to just give him a pass for every bad thing, because he's played for like 5 years now under the kind of pressure that broke Mark Bulger after about a season and a half with the St. Louis Rams. And Russell Wilson has now played 5 straight years with that level of pass protection, and he's still among the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So you almost have to say, look, if you throw all the bad passes you want, to be able to stay at any level of competency behind that offensive line is a masterful job. And it's not just the Seahawks now. They've been doing it for years, and they've been deliberately avoiding putting money and resources into this offensive line because they can put it everywhere else, and it's been winning them games. But there seems to be so many more teams now where the offensive line is an Achilles heel. It is the thing that is crippling that offense, and it's the Bengals this year. It's the Texans. It's, the Cardinals' offensive line, the Colts. It was a 16-13 game. Same kind of deal. It's just wretched offensive line play. And I don't know how many of them can actually get any better because the players just aren't there.
Yeah, the Russell Wilson thing, I mean, he was funny because we didn't charge the offensive line with any sacks yesterday. We charged 2 to Russell Wilson, one of which I put on Twitter, where he was in a clean pocket and
span in a circle and fell over.
Yeah, somebody said he accidentally clicked the juke button, right? You click the analog by accident. That's what it looked like he did in the pocket. But then I actually tweeted out before it happened. I said, this is one of those games where Wilson is off. It's just ugly, and then he'll bail them out. He'll make one spectacular play, and that'll be it. And that's exactly what he did. He had pressure coming from 2 different angles in about 1.9 seconds. Houdini's his way out of the pocket and then throws a strike in the corner of the end zone. I think that's what makes Russell Wilson so special. But he also has so many games like yesterday where he was just poor ball security, and it did look like he was seeing ghosts and feeling the pressure from the offensive line. Now, he's a notorious. I think he's kind of a slow starter, and it takes him time. And middle of the season, he'll probably go on a bit of a run, but a bit of a rough start for Russell Wilson. And every year we ask, is this the year that the offensive line truly comes back to bite? At some point, I mean, it's they've only won one Super Bowl, but at some point the poor offensive line has to slow you down as a team. 4
players so far this year are getting pressured on more than 40% of their dropbacks. 40% is, to me, it's the threshold of when it's unmanageable is somewhere in that 40% ballpark.
The NFL average is about low 30s, I believe, right?
So when you're over 40, that's somewhere, the threshold is somewhere around there where the pressure is just, it's too much. You just, no matter how good you are, you cannot sustain any kind of good play in the face of that much pressure for any extended period of time. And at the moment, there are 4 players that are getting pressured more than 40%, of which Russell Wilson is one of them. Matthew Stafford is at 39.5. Just behind that, Deshaun Kaiser is at 38.5, though a lot of that is him. It's just, there's so much poor pass blocking in the NFL right now, and it's why you're seeing these low scoring games.
On the other hand, the teams that are at the top of our pass blocking efficiency numbers, Oakland Raiders, number 1, Pittsburgh Steelers, number 2, both teams, of course, 2-0. Tampa Bay, through 1 game, number 3 and 1-0. Green Bay, number 4. Now, of course, they're 1-1, but they held up really well against the Seattle Seahawks in week 1.
Also, they were missing a bunch of their pass blockers yesterday.
Yes, and a lot of injuries that actually probably dropped them to number 4. Believe it or not, the San Francisco 49ers are up there. I think there's a little bit of that Kyle Shanahan factor in there, protecting them a little bit. You got some their play action, their boot stuff that protects them a little bit. New Orleans Saints are also up there as well, despite their being 0-2. But they've got bigger issues, namely the defensive side of the ball, where they're giving up a passer rating of over 140 to opposing quarterbacks. But look, I think the offensive line, I feel like we almost need like a weekly, therapy session discussing offensive line play around the NFL. And to your point, certainly crippling a lot of teams. I don't think anything summed up the importance of the offensive line quite like the Jacksonville games from week 1 to week 2. We're talking week 1, Jacksonville goes up against Houston. Was it 10 sacks or 11? I start.
I don't know. Calais Campbell had 5 of them by himself.
They had double-digit sacks, okay, in week 1 against the Houston Texans, and they barely got a hand on Marcus Mariota in week 2 with that same exact defensive line going up against a Titans offensive line that's one of the league's best.
In total pressures, week 1, the defense players for the Jacksonville Jaguars amassed 39 total pressures in one game.
And that's, just to be clear, you can have multiple on one play and all that stuff, but 39 total pressures that we assigned to defensive players for the Jaguars.
Yes. 39 players on the Jaguars amassed 39 total pressures. So some of them were combined, 3 guys can get pressure on one play, etc. This week, 9. So they went from 39 to 9 in the course of a week just by changing the offensive line from one of the worst to one of the best.
So that's why the week 1 narratives sometimes don't hold water, because one game sample size against a certain opponent certainly changes things. So chances are Jacksonville's somewhere in between there. They're not the 10 sack type of defensive line that we saw in week 1. They're probably not a 9 total pressure defensive line that we saw in week 2. So maybe that bodes well for Jaguars fans that, hey, the defense I think they'll be able to do some damage against your middle-of-the-pack offensive lines going forward.
I mean, Calais Campbell went from 10 total pressures himself to 2.
Right.
So, I mean, it was literally, you go from the worst offensive line, arguably the worst offensive line in the league with that Houston Texans offense, to suddenly one of the best last year by our PFF grading in the Tennessee Titans, and torpedoed.
Yeah, the Tennessee Titans offensive line, certainly a little bit better than, the worst offensive line in the league, your Houston Texans. Guys, we've been talking about our friends over at Draft for a little over a month now, and we're having a ton of fun playing their version of fantasy football. They have all sorts of options. It's at draft.com, or you can just search Draft in the App Store. I'm already a part of a couple full season leagues where it's a best ball league where they just take your best players. I did my drafting, flew through it quickly, and they just take my best players every week. I don't have to worry about the waiver wire, don't have to worry about trades or injuries. My team is already set, and I will forget it until the end of the season, hopefully winning some real money, and that's what you guys can do too. You can put up a little bit of money to win real cash prizes. The games they have right now, they've got head-to-head versions, they've got 3-player drafts. You can have all sorts of different style play, and it's a ton of fun, and we're here to give you guys a free $3 game once you get to draft.com or Draft in the App Store and use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF over at draft.com. Search Draft in the App Store if you want to go that way. Tons of good games. It's not just NFL, MLB, golf, NBA, NHL. It is a very addicting site for you guys to get to and play and to win real money. So go check that out. That's promo code PFF over at draft.com or Draft in your App Store.
Real money is so much better than fake money.
I did like playing Monopoly as a kid.
Yeah?
But at some point, you're like, man.
But if somebody offered to replace your Monopoly money with real money.
Oh, no, that was where I got to. Like, this is great, and I got all these houses and stuff, and the cash is flowing, but give me the real money.
Even as a kid, I think you'd take that deal. If somebody said, look, I'm going to replace this pink stuff with real money, you'd go for it.
I think it's a good deal.
Yeah.
The real money is a little bit more valuable. Where else? Any other big themes for you in week 2? I'm throwing you on the spot here because we didn't have this in the plan. Before we give our very special PFF Elite stats of the week.
Yeah, I don't know if anything else really leapt out. We've done the offensive line things, which really has been crippling a bunch of teams.
You want to talk about quarterback play real quick as a whole?
What's your thing about quarterback play?
It's been poor.
Well, that's the offensive line, isn't it? I mean, how much of that is impacting by just no pass protection?
But is this a chicken or the egg type of thing? Is it truly, guys are going to get if they're getting pressured, we're going to see poor quarterback play.
Yes.
Versus, but I mean, we're still not seeing quarterbacks overcome this pressure.
We've done that number. We've done the numbers. We've done our thing. You know, on average, getting pressure on a quarterback takes his passer rating down 34 points. That's the number that it is. It takes you from the mid-90s in terms of passer rating to the mid-60s.
And remember, passer rating is something we always say is a pretty good indicator of what a passing offense has done, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a quarterback.
Now, there are quarterbacks that can overcome that for a short period of time. Right. And you can even see a guy overcome it for an entire season. I mean, Eli Manning's 2011 in the face of bad pass protection from the Giants was one of the greatest runs against pressure that I've ever seen. Ben Roethlisberger has had a season where he's done that. Aaron Rodgers has had a season where he's done that. So it's possible to do it one guy for a run of a season, but over a long period of time, every single quarterback in the NFL gets markedly worse when you're able to apply heat to them. So if your offensive line standard is going down across the league, or at least the number of bad offensive lines is going up, even if the overall, you know, it's almost like kind of a haves and a have-not situation is developing where we're still seeing some really good offensive lines. That Oakland Raiders offensive line is destroying dudes out there. And there's a few of them. It's not like they're the only team out there. The Oakland Raiders have a good line. Tennessee Titans have a good line. We're seeing some good offensive lines in the league. It's just that the number of those that are really, really bad seems terrible. I don't know if the talent in offensive line terms is just polarizing, or if offensive line coaches maybe are becoming more important, but whatever it is, as long as the number of bad offensive lines in the NFL continues to go up, you're going to see the number of quarterbacks struggling go up, because it is a direct correlation. You might get a guy that can buck that trend for a while, but it's you can't fight it. It's like Father Time. It's always going to kick your ass eventually.
I'm really fascinated by this whole thing because the last few years in the NFL, everything has pointed towards more offense. Not necessarily better offense, but more offense.
Yeah.
There's more screens. There's RPOs now. I saw Tom Brady throw one of those stupid tap passes yesterday that goes, it's a completion and it's free yards. I mean, the NFL statistically, everything's becoming easier for the quarterback, all of the defensive rules. So the things we're looking into here, I don't think the quarterbacks are any worse. I don't think they're necessarily bad across the board. Is it the offensive line, as we're saying? Is it what I hinted at last week? Maybe that there are just some better defensive players coming into the NFL these last couple of years. This is the type of stuff. Only week 2. I don't know that we have great answers yet, but I want to investigate a little bit further. One number that stands out to me, 90 passer rating used to be a kind of a rare thing in the NFL. It used to be, 3 or 4 guys a season would reach that. Last year, 19 guys had a passer rating of 90 plus. 80 used to be a pretty good passer rating. Last year, there were 26 guys at 80 plus. So we're talking 90 is all of a sudden like this average passer rating. Average passer rating in the NFL was right around 89, I believe, last year. Through 2 weeks prior to the Monday night game this year, small sample size, but only 13 quarterbacks are at 90 plus, and only 20 are at 80 plus. So we are actually seeing, is this like the first time in years that we've actually seen offense not steadily climb, or quarterback stats not steadily climb and get better? And this is also early in the season where there's good weather and it's usually easier to throw the ball. If anything, quarterback stats get worse as the season progresses, as you start to get into colder weather and wind and snow and rain. So, look, I just think it's an interesting trend for us to follow as we
I just
get into the season.
Fired it up out of curiosity, but last year after 2 weeks, the numbers were 17 quarterbacks at 90 plus and 25 at 80 plus. So it is a significant step down in both scenarios. But, maybe that is just 1 week.
Something to keep an eye on. All right, Sam, we've been touting and hinting at all of these stats that we're going to drop out. We got them from PFF Elite. That is our $200 product. There are different ways to go get PFF Elite, either on the site, or if you guys just want to leave us a 5-star review, we're going to give one away every single week. We've been doing this for a few weeks now. A free PFF Elite, which comes with our own secret society on Facebook. You guys got to see that. We give away free stuff and talk to you guys and answer questions, all sorts of fun there too. So PFF Elite, the number one offering that PFF has, that includes our signature stats that were taken off the market a couple years ago, but are back. They're back for you guys as part of PFF Elite. Sam and I each pulled out 3 stats that really caught our eye from Elite this week. So, Sam, let's go back and forth. Give me one stat that caught your eye.
All right, we teased this earlier. Kareem Hunt and his broken tackles and all the work he's doing after contact. He has touched the ball 38 times this season and has broken 14 tackles on those 38 carries. That is ridiculous. I mean, that rate is just absolutely ludicrous. Last season, Jay Ajayi broke 58 tackles, but it took him 260 carries to get that far. So a kind of, 1 in, 2 and a bit ratio for Kareem Hunt versus a lot more than that for Jay Ajayi. I'm not even going to attempt to do that math on the fly. But that is a rate that is not sustainable. It is absolutely insane. And one of the week 2 oddities, statistical quirks.
I like it. And that's a rate that you don't even see in college.
No.
A whole lot. Like Saquon Barkley in college isn't even doing that over at Penn State, or doesn't normally, run at that rate. So great start for Kareem Hunt. I'm going to piggyback on what we were just talking about, pressure versus no pressure, and this anomaly in Tom Brady's stats. His stats are completely backwards right now. Currently, 2 weeks into the season, his passer rating under pressure is 150. He actually had a perfect passer rating against the New Orleans Saints this weekend when pressured, 158.3.
So did Sam Bradford in week 1.
And Sam Bradford. So the Saints, it doesn't even matter when the Saints pressure the quarterback.
It actually makes it worse.
They're giving up a perfect.
You just anger them.
We just figured out they're giving up a perfect passer rating
against pressure.
That is unbelievable. So Brady's at 150 under pressure through 2 weeks. With no pressure, he's at only 85.6. Those numbers should be completely flipped. They're not going to stay that way, but for just a 2-week anomaly and pulling that stat out of our signature stats, pretty fascinating.
All right, the next one. Mike Glennon has had 11 dropped passes so far this season through 2 games, which is 5 more than any other quarterback in the NFL.
Wow.
So Glennon is not exactly...
some that could have actually won the game.
Yeah,
Atlanta in week 1.
So Glennon's not exactly, lighting things up, but neither is he being helped by what may be the worst receiving core in the game.
What was the Matt Barkley game last year? Didn't he have 10 in a game?
Quite
playing for
possibly,
Chicago?
Yeah, he had some ugly drops.
The Bears need to catch the ball a little bit better. Okay, another stat that we hinted at earlier. We talked about Oakland's offensive line. We've talked about Houston's offensive line. Well, what is the difference between those 2 offensive lines? In 2 games, the Oakland offensive line has given up only 4 total pressures. That's 4 pressures that we have directly assigned to one of their 5 offensive linemen. Houston has given up 44. 11 times more pressure than Oakland in 2 games.
That's pretty crazy.
Those are the top and bottom end of our pass blocking efficiency rankings. Oakland's given up 4, Houston with 44.
So obviously the on pace statistics that everybody loves to do after 2 weeks and get angry about.
Stuff. Give me the pace stuff.
That puts the Raiders on pace to surrender 64 total pressures, if my math holds up.
And Houston's already at 44.
Well, yes, that's the bad part. But the 64, the best team in the NFL, best 2 teams, in fact, were Oakland and Kansas City last year. They gave up 126 over 16 games. So they're basically on pace to give up half the best mark last season, which was themselves.
What a huge number. Or lack thereof, actually.
Other way.
It's a low number.
Really low number. All right, the other end of that scale, you've got how much pressure you're giving up. Somehow, Menelik Watson, the right tackle for the Denver Broncos, has conspired to surrender 6 sacks already through 2 games.
Wow.
Now, that in and of itself sounds like a pretty big number, but only 12 offensive tackles last year gave up more than that over the whole season, and he's already given up 6 through 2 games.
That's tough to do.
That's crazy.
Look, now look, when the giving up sack for an offensive lineman, it's not always like the be-all, end-all, but because you can get whooped and it doesn't even become a sack. But usually if you're giving up a sack, it's because you're getting whooped. Something bad's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not like the grade is saying something different. He's got a PFF grade of 27.9 at the moment, which is worse than George Fant last year.
Oh man, George Fant. I'm sorry, George. George is out for the season, but was our lowest graded offensive tackle.
To be fair to George, the only guy that is below Menelik Watson right now is the guy that George is keeping on the bench. So they at least had their tackles in the right order.
Reese Odiambo.
Yeah, 25.9, which would be the worst mark we have ever given an offensive tackle over the past decade.
Reese was giving up a little bull rush pressure again yesterday.
A little?
Getting put on skates.
Yeah.
I think he missed about 6 backside cutoff blocks.
Not ideal.
In zone schemes, mostly against DeForest Buckner, but that was Reese's game. All right, the last stat I'm pulling out. The highest graded, and this is from PFF Edge and Elite. You get this on both of them. This is from our player grades. Dietrich Wise of the New England Patriots has the number one pass rush grade against among rookie edge defenders so far this season. Wise was a fourth-round pick, I believe. Now I'm questioning myself. A guy that we liked quite a bit coming out, touted him as maybe a potential second-round pick. Yes, he was a fourth-round pick for New England. Very productive career at Arkansas, and so far now he's got 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and a hurry through 2 games, and maybe a key to that New England defensive front with fellow Arkansas former fourth-rounder Trey Flowers. Those are 2 guys who are extremely productive in college, graded well in our system, and are probably the 2 best pass rushing presences up front for New England, and a couple unsung players that I think are going to be needed because that defense doesn't really have a ton of playmakers in the front 7. So Dietrich Wise, number one pass rush grade among rookies so far this season.
I like it.
That's it, man.
Yep.
Week 2 in the books.
Done.
All right, guys. PFF podcast, in case you guys aren't down or don't know about the new format, Monday is review day. Tuesday, Zach Robinson and myself will be breaking down quarterbacks. Hit us up on Twitter with some suggestions. I'm at PFF_Steve. Sam is at PFF_Sam. Hit us up with suggested quarterbacks that you want to hear about. I think Carson Wentz might be on the docket this week because Eagles fans are just up in arms about Carson Wentz and his grades and his performance. So maybe we'll break him down. We'll pick 4 or 5 guys, break them down in depth. Sam and I will be back Wednesday for Mailbag Day, right? What do we have?
Mailbag.
You guys can hit us up with questions. What is it, Sam?
Podcasts at profootballfocus.com.
So we got some good ones last week from there, from the email address. We can also take some on Twitter at PFFSteve, at PFFSam. Give us your questions, and then listen to your question. We'll name you guys by name on our
that
Wednesday
in of
podcast.
Itself is worth listening to.
It
Steve
is.
stumble through people's Twitter handles.
Listen to me try to pronounce names on the podcast. Well worth it. And then late Thursday, early Friday, we're talking, Week 3 preview, which last week we did live at Queen City Radio here in Cincinnati. So those are your programming notes. Don't forget to hit up our sponsors, DraftKings and Draft. Love both of them. And that'll do it for week 2. Thanks to everybody for listening. We'll talk to you guys later in the week.